female reproductive system and particularly the physiology of menstrual cycle will be discussed in this session along with its hormonal and physiological regulation. Starting from this image, which is showing the hormonal interplay between hypothalamus, which releases gonadotropin releasing hormone, pituitary. From anterior pituitary, there is release of luteinizing hormone and the follicle stimulating hormone. Luteinizing hormone majorly stimulates the theca cells as well as the granulosa cells, whereas FSH only stimulates the granulosa cells. In response to which, the granulosa cell secretes estrogen. Also, they produce progestins, which are taken up by the theca cells to form androgens, and ultimately, the most important female reproductive hormones, estrogens and progestins, and small quantities of androgens are released in the blood, which act at the target tissue. Also, you can see ovaries granulosa cells are producing two other hormones, activin and the inhibin. Another thing, you can see the positive and negative feedback cycles. So mostly you can see the progestins are having this feedback to the anterior pituitary as well as to the hypothalamus. Similarly, estrogens are having this feedback to the anterior pituitary as well as to the hypothalamus. Mostly this relationship is negative feedback mechanism, except one point in the monthly cycle when this is going to be a positive feedback just before the ovulation. Activin, you can see, is released from the ovary to stimulate the anterior pituitary, whereas inhibin, as is evident by the name, is released to inhibit the anterior pituitary from producing these FSH and LH, that is the luteinizing hormone. So the whole regulation of monthly rhythm is an interplay between ovaries, hypothalamic and pituitary hormones, which are controlled under the pulsatile release of GnRH, which is going to stimulate FSH and LH. This is very important, the pulsatile release. If from external infusion of GnRH is given, that continuous infusion of GnRH will be incapable of stimulating that much FSH and LH production as the pulsatile release can do. Negative feedback effects of estrogen and progesterone are there to decrease the secretion of anterior pituitary. Inhibin is also having a negative action on FSH-LH production, but there is one point where is positive feedback of estrogen occurs just before ovulation, and that is responsible for the pre-ovulatory luteinizing hormone surge. So this is one exception in the hormones endocrinology as well, where the negative feedback is converted to positive feedback. Estrogen has this peculiar feedback effect of stimulating pituitary secretion of luteinizing hormone and to a lesser extent also the secretion of follicle stimulating hormone. Here you can see in a regular average 28 days cycle, this is showing ovulation at day 14. And if you have a look at the level of the hormones, estrogen peak occur twice in the cycle, one before ovulation, other after ovulation. Progesterone peaks occur after ovulation. Follicle stimulating hormone peaks occurs in the first half of the cycle, and there is a little bit pre-ovulatory surge and a very significant luteinizing hormone surge occurring just before the time of the ovulation. Other, you can see the changes in the ovarian follicle occurring from primordial follicle to the pre-ovulatory to the mature follicle, which is ovulating, and then the formation of corpus luteum and ultimately its regression. In the uterine cycle, you can see the endometrial menstruation first of all in the first 5 days, and then their proliferation, and then secretory activity development. And this is what we are going to discuss under the influence of these hormones one by one. Basically, the regular cyclical changes that may be regarded as periodical preparation for fertilization and pregnancy. We call it menstrual cycle. And the most conspicuous feature of that is periodic bleeding, which was caused by the shedding of the uterine mucosa, and we call it menstruation. The length of the cycle is variable, but on average this is 28 days, and the days of the cycles are identified by numbers starting with the first day of menstruation. So in a 28-day cycle, day 1 will be taken as day 1 of the menstruation. The menstrual cycle is having the cyclical changes in the ovaries, uterus, cervix, vagina, as well as the breast. And these all changes are occurring in response to the hypothalamic pituitary axis. And we will be discussing all these one by one with reference to the endocrinal group. So first of all, the ovarian cycle. Ovarian cycle is divided into two phases based upon the ovulation. Before ovulation on day 14, we call it follicular phase, and after ovulation, after day 14, we call it luteal phase. And we are considering a 28-day cycle in this explanation, where day 1 is the day of menstruation over here, and day 28 is the completion of the cycle. In a 28-day cycle, the ovulation will occur at the day 14. Before that, from 0 to 14, there is follicular phase. From 14 to 28 day, there is luteal phase. We will have a look at the sequence of events one by one. The top left side is showing the hormonal changes in the pituitary hormones. The bottom left corner is showing the follicular changes in the ovary. The top right corner is showing the changes in the estrogen and progesterone, which are being produced by the ovary. And the bottom right corner is showing the endometrial changes of the uterus. So starting from the day 1, which is the day 1 of the cycle, and all values are written in a reference to this. Day 1 reference value of estrogen, progesterone, FSH, LH, endometrial thickness, and the primordial follicle size. As we move on in the follicular phase from day 0 to day 14, let's see what changes we can appreciate. First of all, you can see a rising level of the FSH in the beginning of the follicular phase. This raised level of FSH led to the production of the estrogen, as follicle stimulating hormone directly stimulates the granulosa cells. In response to high level of FSH, when the estrogen level starts rising, the negative feedback starts decreasing the level of the FSH. So in the initial half of the follicular phase, FSH is high, in response to which the estrogen level becomes higher in the later half of the follicular phase. Under the influence of this follicle stimulating hormone, you can also appreciate the growth of the ovarian follicle from the primordial follicle to the premature and then the mature ovarian follicle, in which the secretions of granulosa cells have accumulated, antral cavity has been formed, thick cumulus ovophorus has become, theca cells have started developing. So the follicle development you can appreciate under the influence of FSH as well as the release of high level of estrogen. Under the influence of this estrogen being produced from these follicular cells, you can see the impact on the endometrial thickness, which is undergoing its proliferative phase. Its thickness has increased from day 0 to day 14. Also, the blood supply inside and the endometrial glands size has also increased during the endometrial proliferative phase, and this is all under the influence of estrogen. So at the beginning, when there was very low estrogen and progesterone level, FSH was increased, which led to the conversion of primordial follicle to Graafian follicle. Estrogen production was increased, which led to the thickening of the endometrium. And then there was negative feedback to FSH, LH, and inhibin was produced, leading to again a decline in the level of FSH and LH. Now, what happens just before the day of ovulation when the follicular phase is ending? The estrogen level has again reduced. In fact, at day 14, if you see, the estrogen level is still high but has just started to decrease. This is the level of estrogen at day 14. And here is where comes this exception. Instead of having the negative feedback over here to FSH and LH, at this point, the estrogen will have a positive feedback to LH and FSH, resulting in their surge. And the level of luteinizing hormone is specially increased to 6 to 10 times, whereas the level of FSH is increased to 4 times. So this luteinizing hormone surge, especially, and somewhat follicle stimulating hormone surge, is now responsible for the ovulation. As you can see over here, the follicle will rupture and ovum will come out at day 14. Under the influence of estrogen, first, in the follicular phase, the cervical mucus was thin. Now that after ovulation, the estrogen level will start decreasing. The cervical mucus will now start becoming more viscous in the later half. But right now, under the influence of estrogen, this is in favor of better penetration by the sperm. Not only the luteinizing hormone is responsible for letting the ovulation of the ovum out of the follicle, but also it is involved in removing the arrest on the meiosis, and the secondary oocyte now can complete its meiosis. Sorry, the primary oocyte can complete its meiosis 1 to secondary oocyte, and if fertilized only, then it will complete its second meiotic phase. Next is the luteal phase from day 14 to day 28. Under the influence of high level of luteinizing hormone, the follicular cells will be luteinized. And these luteinized cells are now capable of producing estrogen and progesterone, as you can see by the rise in the level of estrogen again, and especially the progesterone in the second half of the cycle. And when the estrogen and especially the progesterone level will be high, the endometrial changes you can appreciate in the secretory phase. The thickness has increased even more. The glands will become more secretory, and also because of the effect of the progesterone, the body temperature will be raised, as we discussed in our session on indicators of ovulation. In 7 to 8 days of ovulation, corpus luteum will then lose its secretory function and degenerate in 10 days. As you can see, it has started decreasing in size after 7 to 8 days, and after approximately 12 days, it has reduced in size, and this will ultimately be converted into connective tissue, which will have no secretory power anymore. When the secretory activity of corpus luteum will decrease further, you can see the peak of estrogen and progesterone at the end of the luteal phase has decreased to almost the basal level, and this is the point when the support for the endometrial will be lost and the new cycle will start, at which the endometrial sloughing will start from the uterine endometrium in the form of menstrual flow, and you will see very low estrogen and progesterone level, which will again be a negative feedback for more production of FSH and LH. This FSH will start the production of estrogen from the follicular cells, and the next cycle will continue. Because of the abrupt withdrawal of estrogen and progesterone at this point, when the sloughing of endometrium will occur, the average blood loss is 30 ml to 80 ml on average. So this is showing the ovarian cycle and the hormonal changes in that. From day 0 to day 14, this is follicular phase. From day 14 till 28, this is the luteal phase. FSH and LH surge just before ovulation, and FS surge at the beginning of follicular phase also. 2 peaks of estrogen and 1 peak of progesterone, day 1 is marked by day 1 of the menstrual cycle, whereas ovulation is at day 14. One more important thing to understand over here, in a 28-day cycle, the ovulation is at day 14, and the day of ovulation will vary if the duration of cycle is varying. And this is in normal healthy female, the duration of luteal phase is always constant. This is the follicular phase which is subjected to variation. So in a 30-day cycle, again, the ovulation will occur just 14 days before. That is at day 16, ovulation will occur. Day 16 to 30 will be luteal phase, and day 1 to 16 will be the follicular phase. So you can see the luteal phase is still of 14 days. What is increased is the follicular phase. Similarly, if we take example of a 22-day cycle, you minus 14 from the 22, the ovulation will occur at day 8, and the luteal phase is still of 14 days. What has reduced is the follicular phase. Again, if you take example of, let's suppose, a 40-day cycle, the ovulation will occur at 26th day. The luteal phase will be of 14 days. What has increased is the duration of the follicular phase up to 26 days. So keep this rule in mind. The luteal phase in healthy female is going to be constant 14 days always, and the follicular phase is subjected to variation. Either it will increase or decrease as per the variation in the total duration of the monthly cycle. So divided into follicular and luteal phase, separated by ovulation. Follicular phase variable, luteal phase is constant for 14 days. Luteinizing hormone surge is necessary for ovulation. This is showing the development of the ovarian follicle in different phases of the ovarian cycle, starting from the primordial follicle, which was having the primary oocyte arrested in the prophase 1. This will, every month, a few primordial follicles and primary oocytes will start developing, and the primordial follicle will be replaced by the primary follicle. As you can see, it has now having multiple layer of the granulosa cell. This will then convert into pre-antral follicle, which has antral cavity in which the estrogen and progesterone secretions are produced. Egg is now surrounded by this zona pellucida, and this will then convert into antral follicle in which proper antral cavity has formed. There are theca cells around the ovum as well as the granulosa cells. Ultimately, the pre-ovulatory or mature follicle in which the ovum is suspended by a granulosa cell stalk, and again there is antral cavity there, granulosa cells and the theca cells. When the ovum is ovulated, the follicular cells will convert it into the corpus luteum, which will be producing estrogen and progesterone, and its size will start decreasing at 7 to 8 days, ultimately being repressed, being degenerated and replaced by connective tissue, and we will now call it corpus albicans. So primordial follicle having the primary oocyte and single layer of granulosa cells converted into pre-antral follicle having granulosa and theca cells, and now the antral follicle having the formed antral cavity, zona pellucida, theca cells and the granulosa cells, which then converted into mature follicle in which we have this secondary oocyte as the primary oocyte is now converted to secondary oocyte, and meiosis 1 has been completed. This secondary oocyte is now inside a pre-ovulatory follicle, which upon release may undergo complete meiosis if the fertilization occurs. Once the egg is released, it carries with itself this zona pellucida as well as layers of granulosa cells, which we call corona radiatum. Primordial follicle is having single layer of granulosa cells under the impact of follicle stimulating hormone and somewhat luteinizing hormone. 6 to 12 will convert into primary follicles, and especially under the influence of FSH, these primary follicles will then grow in size. Granulosa cells will produce estrogen, theca interna and externa will form estrogen and progesterone, and this will further increase the level of estrogen. FSH LH receptors will convert into central follicle, vesicular follicle, and ultimately the mature follicle will be formed. Now, how does the ovulation occur? As you can again see over here, by the rupture of this follicle, the ovum is released along with its zona pellucida and the cumulus ovophorus. It is uptaken by the fibrated end of the fallopian tube of the uterus, and then it travels through the fallopian tube. In normal 28-day cycle, ovulation occurs 14 days after the onset of menstruation. Shortly before the ovulation, the outer wall of the follicle swells rapidly and a small area appears in the center of the follicular capsule, and we call it stigma. So this is under the influence of the luteinizing hormone surge. The stigma has developed in another 30 minutes. The fluid will begin to ooze from the stigma, and 2 minutes later, the stigma will rupture, leading to the release of the ovary outside, and that is surrounded by corona radiata. The surge of luteinizing hormone is necessary for this ovulation. 2 days before ovulation, the secretion of LH by anterior pituitary is going to increase by 6 to 10 folds, and peak will occur at 16 hours before ovulation. FSH surge will also occur, but up to 2 to 3 folds only. So what is the cause of this LH surge? We have repeatedly said this is because of a positive feedback from the estrogen. Now, how will this luteinizing hormone lead to the ovulation? This flowchart is beautifully summarizing the phenomena, starting from the action of the luteinizing hormone on the follicular cells to produce progesterone. This progesterone is now going to do the series of events which will result in ovulation. First, it will stimulate the proteolytic enzyme collagenase, which will weaken the follicular wall and degenerate the stigma. Number 2, this progesterone is going to increase the blood flow to the follicle, follicular hyperemia, and increase prostaglandin secretion, which are also going to transudate plasma into the follicle. Follicle will swell. So a follicle increased in size, swollen because of hyperemia and prostaglandin production, plus the action of collagenases on the walls, weakened wall, ultimately leading to the rupture of stigma and release of the ovum outside. Luteal phase of the ovarian cycle. Once the ovulation has occurred, the left of the follicle will be filled with the blood. We will call it corpus hemorrhagicum. The remaining granulosa cells and theca cells will now be filled with the lipid inclusion, and we call it corpus luteum. In corpus luteum, the granulosa cells will be producing estrogen and progesterone, and theca cells will be producing androgens. If no pregnancy occurs, this corpus luteum begins to degenerate in 7 to 8 days, and in 12 days, it will be replaced by the corpus albicans. Whereas if the pregnancy occurs, this corpus luteum will be sustained for a while to under the influence of beta HCG. This is showing the conversion of follicular cells to the corpus luteum, which is capable of producing estrogen and progesterone, and then its degeneration to corpus albicans. Corpus albicans secretes both estrogen and progesterone under the influence of luteinizing hormone majorly. In early pregnancy, it also secretes chorionic gonadotrophin, which is also secreted by the placenta later. In case no pregnancy occurs, degeneration will start in 7 to 8 days and completed in the 12 days. Involution of corpus luteum will lead to decrease in the level of estrogen and progesterone. Negative feedback suppression. This is what is during the luteal phase. During the luteal phase, estrogen and progesterone are high, which are having a negative feedback on FSH and LH. Also, the inhibin is being produced by the luteal cells. So, the ultimate result is in the early half of the luteal phase, estrogen, progesterone are high, LH and FSH are reduced. Finally, when the corpus luteum degenerates at day 12, now there is sudden cessation of secretion of estrogen and progesterone. The feedback inhibition of anterior pituitary will be removed and the level of FSH and LH will rise again. This will start forming and developing new ova, and this is the beginning of the new ovarian cycle. Sometimes abnormally there are anovulatory cycles, and in which the other things keep on happening regularly except the pre-ovulatory luteinizing hormone surge is not there, so the ovulation will not occur. In these females, the corpus luteum will not be formed and there will be almost no secretion of the progesterone. The cycle will be shortened, but the rhythm will continue, and this is mostly seen at puberty and around the perimenopausal period. Cyclical changes in the ovaries we have discussed. Now the cyclical changes in the cervix. Mucosa of uterine cervix does not undergo cyclical desquamation, but there are regular changes in the cervical mucus. Estrogen makes the mucus thinner and more alkaline, which is responsible for survival and transport of the sperm before ovulation in the follicular phase. After ovulation in the luteal phase, progesterone is more. This is going to make the mucus thick, tenacious, and cellular, which is going to retard further movement of sperm and infectious microbes. The mucus is going to be the thinnest at the time of the ovulation. And if we do the Fern test, it is going to fern when this is the thinnest, and the ferning effect will be lost under the effect of the progesterone in the luteal phase. Next is the effect on the vagina. Under the influence of estrogen, the epithelium becomes cornified, thus making it prepared for the mechanical stress. Under the influence of progesterone, a thick mucus plug will be formed in the vagina as well, and it will be more infiltrated by the leukocytes. Again, a protective function for sustaining the pregnancy. Cyclical changes in the breast. Estrogen is going to cause proliferation of ductal system, and in the second half, progesterone will lead to the growth of lobular and the alveolar system of the breast. And now, another most important, the uterine and the endometrial cycle. As we divided it before ovulation into follicular and luteal phase for ovaries, for uterine cycle, this is divided into menstrual phase at the beginning of the cycle, followed by the proliferative phase until there is ovulation. After ovulation, till the menstruation, again we call it the secretory phase. So, uterine cycle is divided into menstrual phase, proliferative phase, and the secretory phase. Before we get into the detail of that, let's have a look at the uterine wall. This is showing the endometrium and myometrium. And endometrium, you can see there is growth of endometrial glands as well as the tortuous blood vessels. The bottom 1/3 of this endometrium is known as the basal layer, and the top 2/3 is known as the functional layer. So this is the stratum basal, which is kept constant, and the stratum functional is desquamated during menstruation. The superficial 2/3 arteries also you can appreciate are weak, fragile, coiled and long vessels which are shed during menstruation, whereas in the basal layer the arteries are short and straight which do not desquamate during menstruation. So let's have a look at the cycle phases one by one, starting from the proliferative, secretory phase and the menstruation phase. So menstruation occurs at the beginning of the cycle from day 1 to day 5, and the most of the endometrium is desquamated, usually the stratum functional, the top 2/3 of the endometrium, and afterwards, during the proliferative phase, when the FSH level has increased and estrogen level has increased, the desquamated epithelium is now recovered. there is growth of the stromal cells as well as the proliferation of the epithelial cells of the endometrium. Endometrial surface will be reepithelialized and its thickness will increase. Thickness will increase by the growth of the stromal cells. Also, there will be lengthening of the glands inside as well as the proliferation of the blood vessels which were lost before. And the endometrial glands, especially of the cervical regions, will secrete thin stringy mucus that will help the movement of the sperm in this phase. So this is helping the repair of the endometrium that was lost in the menstruation phase as well as the proliferation of blood vessels and the glands. The proliferative phase or the estrogen phase occurs before ovulation. It can maybe from 5 to 14 days, is subjected to variation as the follicular phase in the ovarian cycle. Endometrial surface is going to be reepithelialized within 4 to 7 days after beginning of menstruation. At the time of ovulation, the endometrium will again be 3 to 5 millimeters thick. Under the influence of estrogen, endometrial glands will only lengthen. They will not become convoluted or secretory. Whereas during the secretory or progestational phase of the endometrial cycle, which is occurring after ovulation, progesterone and estrogen will be high in quantity. Estrogen will keep on proliferating the endometrium, whereas progesterone will be making the glands more secretory by making them more tortuous and making the arteries more spiral and convoluted. By the end of the progestational phase or secretory phase, the endometrial thickness will now be 5 to 6 millimeters. And during this phase, the cytoplasm of stromal cell has increased by the deposition of lipid and glycogen in them. And this is what will provide nutrition to the early developing embryo. Fertilization occurs. Blood supply has further increased, blood vessels have become tortuous, and glands have become convoluted and secretory. Purpose of preparing secretory endometrium is to make available large amount of stored nutrients for the fertilized ovum if needed. From the time the fertilized ovum enters the uterine cavity, that is 3 to 4 days after ovulation, until it gets implanted 7 to 9 days, this uterine secretions, or we call it uterine milk, is going to provide nutrition to the early zygote. Once the ovum implants in the endometrium, the trophoblastic cells will still keep on digesting the endometrium and absorb its stored substances until the placenta is functional. If no fertilization occurs, corpus luteum involutes 2 days before the end of menstrual cycle, that is at day 12. Estrogen, progesterone will be lost. That will lead to involution of endometrium. Now, this involuting endometrium will have the vasospasm of the spiral arteries of stratum Snell, mostly under the impact of these prostaglandins. This vasospasm will lead to spotty hemorrhages and necrotic patches in the endometrium, and within 24 to 36 hours this will start letting the desquamation of necrotic endometrium, and the flow we see is because of the desquamation of this tissue which is necrotic. Blood in the uterine cavity, prostaglandins are responsible for that, initiating the uterine contraction as well as expelling the uterine content. So menstruation is marked by the menstrual flow for 3 to 5 days, but the flow as short as 1 day and as long as 8 days can occur in normal women. The average blood loss is 30 ml, but may vary from slight to 80 ml. Within 4 to 7 days after the menstruation starts, loss of blood ceases because by this time the endometrium has again become reepithelialized under the influence of estrogen. So let us summarize what we have done in this session. The different phases under the influence of estrogen and progesterone. So estrogen is having its peak just before ovulation and somewhat after ovulation. Progesterone is only peaking after ovulation. FSH before ovulation and LH just before ovulation. Ovaries were In follicular phase and luteal phase, before and after ovulation, vagina becomes cornified before ovulation and epithelium proliferated to produce thick mucus after ovulation. Cervical mucus from thin to thick before and after ovulation. Breast having ductal and alveolar development before and after ovulation under the influence of estrogen and progesterone, and uterus showing proliferative secretory phase and also the menstrual phase before and after ovulation. So that was all about the female monthly reproductive cycle, which involves cyclical changes in many reproductive organs, including ovary, uterus, most important, and somewhat in the vagina, cervix, and breast as well. Thank you very much.